Hey, welcome back to another episode of Movement Mastery. We're talking lunges. Lunges are a tool and an exercise we use for assessment as well as training of single leg knee flexion. I want to demonstrate in this video progressions within lunging because not all lunging is the same. Some lunge forms are going to be more accessible for you and your clients, and some are going to be much more advanced. I see so often that people jump into doing walking lunges within their training or within their metcons and conditioning in their group classes or personal training sessions. Walking lunges are highly advanced. So I'm going to demonstrate first a static reverse lunge. The static reverse lunge is a much more accessible version of the lunge for your clients that are just getting started. If you see people struggling to keep balance, and balance looks like having a vertical torso, keeping their hips level as they're doing lunges, and not leaning forward or shaking to lean back as they stand up. If you see those cues coming from your client, it means that the lunge variation that you're giving them is too advanced. So to back it up, we can start with the static reverse lunge. Once they've mastered that and they show control and stability, the next lunge form that we like to introduce in our training concepts is the forward static lunge. So you're going to step forward and step back. The static forward lunge is actually something we use in our assessment protocols because it helps us to identify a key trait of the lunge. Where does somebody drive their force from within their leg? Are they pushing quad dominant, or are they able to engage their posterior chain? How do I know based upon looking at a forward static lunge? Well, what we want to pay attention to is the front foot. When somebody's doing a forward static lunge, we want to see them push back to standing through their heel. If you push back through your heel, that's good evidence that you have good control of the movement with your hamstring and your glute, which is what we're trying to achieve in the lunge. If you see somebody push through their toe, okay, so you can really perceive that they're pressing through the front of their foot, not their heel, that means they're more quad dominant, and you're going to want to cue them to drive through their heel. How do you cue somebody to drive through their heel? Tell them to make the heel the last thing that comes off the ground when they stand back up in their lunge. Okay, they've mastered that static forward lunge. Now you can start to add back in that dynamic nature of a walking lunge. Don't skip to this step too quickly. Make sure the first two steps are solid. A walking lunge is great for conditioning workouts. It's great to build into your metcons and your classes, but only if somebody has the stability for it. Finally, we can get to loading. You've got to master body weight mechanics in the lunge before you start adding weight to it. And if you're going to add weight to it, remember that there's different layers of complexity when it comes to loading. So I'm demonstrating a suitcase lunge as the first sort of introduction of load, something that's simple, is not going to challenge your client too much out of the gates. So holding load at your sides is a great entry point for loading the lunge. And then lastly, you're seeing me do a kettlebell rack overhead walking lunge. That's combining a dynamic movement in the walking lunge with a complicated and difficult loading position. Each side of the body is holding the kettlebell in a different place. You've got load that's far away from your center of mass. Use these tips within your coaching client relationships, within your group classes, and within your own training, and make sure that you're stable before you progress. Check us out next week for some more functional bodybuilding tips on how to master movements.